At this very moment, in the silent corridor separating the Comet 3I Atlas from our planet, something has appeared that was not there yesterday. It is not a reflection, not an instrumental noise, not a catalogued piece of space debris. It is a new dark object without a conventional thermal signature, precisely positioned on the line of sight between the interstellar visitor and Earth. We first noticed it as a subtraction of light, a clean bite in the variable glow of the Comet 3I Atlas, lasting only a few seconds and leaving an occultation curve too perfect to be chance. Then came two independent confirmations, separated by half the world and a few hours. And then all the alarms sounded. If an unknown object is chosen to reveal itself in this cosmic corridor and at this precise moment, when the planet's gazes are fixed on the comet, these are not innocent coincidences. We are dealing with a message from physics or something that exploits it. What troubles most is not its presence, but the manner in which it announces itself. Wide-field telescopes recorded the drop in light flux like a two-step staircase, first a sharp decline, then a steady plateau, finally an exit as crisp as the entry. This geometric profile, with straight edges and symmetric timings, does not resemble the diffuse shadow of cometary dust or the irregular plume of a jet. It looks like an edge. It looks like engineering. Before anyone too hastily utters that word, let us lay the data on the table. In the fraction of a second when the light recovered, subtle oscillations appeared, tiny ripples betraying multiple edges, as if this were not a single body but a structure with wings or panels. The orbital dynamics team attempted the impossible in one night, to triangulate an orbit using 3 occultations and a handful of passive radar traces. The result is not definitive, but the probable zone narrows to a corridor halfway between the hyperbolic trajectory of the Comet 3I Atlas and Earth's upper magnetosphere. It does not match the orbits of known satellites, does not repeat periods, does not wink with specular rotations. It floats, moves, seems to hold a relative position along the comet-Earth line, as if it has found or sought the exact thread our instruments follow. In parallel, radio telescopes automatically trained on the vector of interest. Nothing in narrowband, nothing on the hydrogen line, nothing that sounded like a beacon. But in broadband, an oddity, a quiet valley of noise, a faint absorption that opens and closes with the same rhythm as the shadow. It is as if the object does not emit but extinguishes. As if it were a filter, a cold plasma lens reorganizing the comet's light and the background murmur. This behavior matches neither space debris, nor meteoroids, nor detached comet fragments. It matches something that knows it is exactly where everyone is looking. At this hour, the American Space Agency proclaims nothing, but inside, there is agitation. I have seen the language of urgent emails and recognize it. Catalogs of everything that could cross that volume are demanded, ephemerides of decommissioned probes are cross-checked, radar signatures are compared. The answer for now is a void. There is nothing catalogued there. No one has a rite of passage in that band. And yet, something has cast its shadow on our curiosity. If you are passionate about following every step of this story with rigor and wonder, support this report and tell me from which city you are experiencing it. We are many under the same sky, trying to fit the same new piece into the puzzle. I returned to the data. The second occultation was not identical to the first. It showed a shoulder, a tiny ledge that appears only if the edge is not smooth. Imagine a butterfly folding its wings, an antenna curling, something adjusting its silhouette to the light it receives. I do not wish to preempt hypotheses that have not passed statistical trials, but this trace is the kind of wink that exoplanet hunters dream of when a ringed world crosses its star. Here there is no star, there is an interstellar comet turned focal point. And in between, an unexpected third, carving the scene with precision. The immediate question is twofold: where did it come from, and why now? For the first, natural options are few. A fragment ejected by the comet itself should share its spectral signature and active dust behavior. It does not. A pebble broken off from nowhere does not linger halfway along a line. It falls, spins, shines, screams its presence in infrared. This one does not scream, it is silent. For the second, the why, there are sober explanations and vertigo. The sober says, geometric coincidence. We are looking exactly where something ordinary is happening. The vertigo says, deliberate positioning on the only ray linking our questions to its trajectory. At the Arctic station, a high-sensitivity magnetometer noted a subtle tremolo, a low-frequency pulse coinciding with the second shadow. It is not a clear signal, not proof of anything, but it reinforces the sense that this object does not merely block light, it touches fields. And yet, when ionospheric satellites passed overhead, they saw no storm, no tide. They saw calm. Almost deliberate calm. Some already christened the silhouette the cutter, for its craft seems to be interrupting flow, of photons, of noise, of coincidences. It could be a lensing effect from a cold plasma cloud, guided by the comet itself like an invisible trailer. It could be a temporary aggregation of charged dust adopting a stable geometry for minutes before dissipating. But then why does it repeat its edge? Why does it sharpen its shadow? Why does it return? I will not claim what I do not know. I will outline the perimeter of the verifiable. There are at least 2 occultation events with consistent profiles across separate stations. There is faint absorption in broadband radio synchronized with a shadow. There is no clear thermal signature in mid-infrared. There is no solar correlate justifying a local plasma artifact. There are no catalogued objects transiting this line in this interval. That is enough to assert it is real, that it deserves full attention, and that anyone daring to downplay its significance will have to fight the curves. As I speak to you, teams are refining a plan to place high-speed cameras in the night zone where the comet will be visible for hours, synchronize atomic clocks to measure the next byte of light with millisecond precision, and if fortune favors us, capture the contour. If that contour confirms panels, wings, edges, we will have crossed a psychological threshold from which return is not easy. I have spent too many nights watching false positives to get excited at the first sign. I have also seen too often the universe toy with our models until it forces us to write a new one. Today, between the Comet 3I Atlas and us, there is a silent third. I do not know if it is natural or not. I know it has taken the one place where it cannot go unnoticed. And that, in itself, is already a statement. The first thing we did, before uttering a single word in public, was to close ranks with the teams monitoring that sky sector. We needed to know if the bite of light was a statistical mirage or a repeatable signature. The second night, with the comet still high and the Earth-comet corridor perfectly traced, we achieved something rare. 3 stations, separated by half the planet, caught the same flux drop with timing differences consistent with a single geometry. The curve was clean again, with that edge that belongs neither to dust nor to a cometary plume. And a detail that is beginning to haunt us repeated, an intermediate shoulder, a brief plateau, as if part of the object entered before the main body. An engineer, with more irony than patience, summed it up: it has hinges. Coordination was a choreography against time. In the desert, we deployed high-speed cameras with shutters in thousandths of a second. At high latitudes, we synchronized photometers with atomic clocks. From a coastal observatory, we powered a modest but fiercely stable spectrograph, calibrated with reference lamps. We wanted to capture something that was not just the absence of light, but its trace in colors. The results silenced us. During the occultation, the comet's spectrum flattened. Part of the fine relief vanished, as if the interposed object acted as a neutral gray filter, non-selective. No molecular absorption signatures, no sawtoothed edges betraying cold gas. Just an even, surgical drop. If it were a cloud of charged dust, I would expect chromaticity. If it were ice, I would expect specific edges. Here, there is no caprice of color. There is a will to extinguish. While we reduced the data, passive broadband radars played their own game. Lacking direct radar illumination forces you to listen to the sky like tuning an ear in a theater. You measure how the object alters the echo of distant transmitters, satellites, even reflected ground stations. In the shadow intervals, the background noise dipped, a trough, a valley, again the metaphor of the extinguisher. A plasma physicist ventured a preliminary explanation, an electron density lens reorganizing the phase of passing waves and canceling part of the field in certain directions. A faint masking, but masking nonetheless. The problem: that lens would need to be stable, cold, and extraordinarily flat-edged to draw the staircase we see. Cold it was, yes, mid-infrared attempts showed nothing above the background. But flatness, that flatness is not given by drifting dust clusters. The question of orbit consumes us. Triangulating a volume with 3 occultations is an ungrateful task, but convergence points to a baffling region, neither low Earth orbit, nor classic high orbit, nor a Lagrange point. It is a relative, mobile position, as if the object does not orbit something but a relation, the line between the comet and us. A colleague coined the term line-of-sight anchor. The name is bold but aptly describes the phenomenon's stubbornness. It stays where the gaze is inevitable. When we slew telescopes a few degrees off, there is no bite. When we retrace the comet-Earth ray, there it is. As if its ecosystem were our attention. In the agencies, the language has shifted from cautious to jittery. Historical catalogs of lost upper stages, debris from forgotten missions, and lists of classified objects are scoured. The answer again is no. Nothing we have sent into the sky can be there, move like that, and not shine thermally. And if it is not ours, whose is it? The obvious is considered, a fragment ejected by the Comet 3I Atlas. But the spectra do not align. A low-reflectivity microasteroid, temporarily caught in a tidal dance with the comet, was also suggested. Its dynamics do not explain the line's repetition. Someone invoked a refraction phenomenon in compressed upper air lamellae from atmospheric gravity waves. The timeline dismantles it, for the bite persists even when the vertical column is stable. In parallel, a detail emerged that, if confirmed, opens an unsettling door. The second night, just before the shadow's entry, we detected a minute oscillation in polarization, a twist in the light's plane that was not there the previous night. It is not large, not dramatic, but coherent across stations. The comet's light, passing something, rotates its polarization by a small angle and then returns. That is not done by any opaque block, it is done by materials with structure, surfaces with order. An optics technician, eyes red from sleeplessness, said it plainly, it has a skin. The networks, of course, have already baptized the intruder, the cutter, the extinguisher, the gate. I am tempted by another name, less literary, the intermediary. For its behavior is not that of an intruder claiming a place, but of a mediator standing between source and receiver. It extinguishes, levels, irons, conceals. And it appears when the comet is in the best window and we have amassed the most instruments. Not when chance rules, but when the most eyes are watching. This synchrony with our capabilities is the heaviest piece. Not all is shadow. There was a flash. At the end of the third occultation, a high-cadence photometer recorded a fleeting point-like gleam, a needle of light barely above the noise, with no color preference. We dubbed it, for lack of a better term, the nail. It lasts less than a blink and does not repeat. It could be an artifact, of course. It could be static, an insect crossing out of focus. Or it could be something that closed and reflected a thread of light just once. I am not selling you a miracle. I am saying we looked for it at other stations, saw no repetition, and for now, it does not support hypotheses on its own. But when you spend nights seeing impossible profiles, every needle pierces your sleep. In the broader picture, there are side effects we prefer not to amplify but which are logged. An Arctic magnetometer repeated the low-frequency tremolo, synchronized with the second bite. 3 far-flung very low-frequency receivers noted a subtle sag in background noise. An atomic clock at one station suffered a minimal slip that self-corrected. None of this is dramatic alone. Together, they trace a fine edge of phenomenon. And yes, there are calls. Energy sector, navigation, defense. Not because there is an imminent threat, but because an object that extinguishes light and noise in the only corridor linking a comet to us is, by definition, a matter of cross-interest. Scenarios are rehearsed. What if it grows? What if another appears? What if tomorrow it decides to stand between a satellite and its ground station? I answer with the sobriety I have left. We do not know what it is. We do not know what it wants. We do not know if it wants at all. We know it positions itself where it matters, that it draws architectural edges, and that for now, it avoids giving us heat or emission lines to incriminate it. I ask you to stay here, with rigor and wonder. Leave your city and your sky in the comments, for this time, more than ever, the community of observers can make a difference. If someone sees the bite from a backyard photometer, that data point is worth gold. If an amateur captures a contour, we will have saved weeks. I close this block with the only honest thing that fits. Between the Comet 3I Atlas and us, there is something we did not know how to name. It behaves as if it understands where we will look, as if its ecosystem is the gaze itself. Perhaps tomorrow it will dissipate and leave us with curves and metaphors. Perhaps tomorrow it will return and shamelessly draw the shape of its edges. In either case, the universe has reminded us of an old lesson. Sometimes the loudest thing is a properly placed absence. And that absence today has the exact shape of our curiosity. The third night changed the board. Not because the object did anything spectacular, but because it chose the precise moment when we had the least room for doubt. We had built a continuous observation line across half the planet, with staggered windows to track the comet-Earth alignment without gaps. And in the minute when a cloud band closed the sky above a key telescope, the bite reappeared at the other end of the network, as if someone had read our schedule. The flux drop was surgical again, but this time it left an extra trace, a delay of fractions of a second between channels, a curving of the curve that happens only if the edge does not cross straight but at a minimal angle to the beam. Translated, either the object adjusted its orientation during the occultation, or we saw the effect of a non-flat structure crossing the ray. The word joint returned to the table, this time without jest. That same night, the polarimetry teams reported a reproducible twist in the light's plane, tiny but consistent, before the shadow's entry. And at the exit, the twist reversed its sign, as if the material had internal order and responded to the angle of incidence. It is not a chemical signature, it is geometric. Some cautiously utter the term metamaterial. Others, more restrained, prefer to speak of microstructured surfaces. I will not baptize anything lightly, but I will not deny the obvious. This trace resembles neither a dust cloud, nor amorphous ice, nor an irregular fragment. From there, the strategy shifted. We stopped seeking only the shadow and began hunting the contour. We placed pupil masks on two mid-sized telescopes to detect edge diffraction, sharpened temporal sampling to squeeze every thousandth of a second from the cameras, and synchronized everything with clocks that, literally, beat in unison. The goal was simple and colossal. If the light staircase is accompanied by a stable diffraction pattern, we can reconstruct a profile. That profile, if it exists, will tell us if there are planes, edges, symmetry. It is the difference between talking about a lump and talking about a form. Meanwhile, an unexpected front opened, low-frequency radio. 3 separate receivers detected a depression in background noise exactly coincident with the midpoint of the third occultation. It was not emission, it was a void. A valley that formed and dissolved in the same rhythm as the shadow. A wave physicist, excited and pale, put it this way: it extinguishes by cancellation, not by blocking. If he is right, we are not facing a simple obstacle but a device that reorganizes the phase and amplitude of what passes through it. Nature knows such phenomena in plasmas, yes, but not with such clean edges, nor with this obedience to our line of sight. Institutional pressure has mounted. 2 protocols were activated, one scientific, the other technical security. The scientific demands that anything asserted be reproducible by at least 2 independent stations and anchored to shared clocks. The security one requests scenarios. What if the intermediary decides to stand between a satellite and its ground antenna? What if the radio depression shifts to critical bands? Could it affect navigation systems if it persists? The answer for now is that there is no evidence of significant operational impact. But the question will not vanish, and it rightly sits on the table, an object that places itself on the only line linking an interstellar messenger to our instruments is, by definition, not trivial. Meanwhile, signals came from the community that matters most to us, the anonymous observers. An amateur on a Mediterranean terrace, with a homemade photometer and a watchmaker's discipline, caught a partial bite and nailed it in time with our curves. Another person, from the Andes, recorded a faint polarization shift at the exact moment we expected. This is the beauty of this moment. A phenomenon that defies catalogs becomes sharp when many eyes synchronize. So I repeat with the serenity of one who trusts his audience. If you have access to a dark sky and a sensitive camera, if you can synchronize your clock precisely, you are part of the experiment. This channel is not a theater, it is a network. In parallel, a new hypothesis began to breathe, that the intermediary neither follows the comet nor orbits Earth but orbits their relation. That is, it is stable not relative to a body but to a geometry. This would explain why we see it only when tracing the comet-Earth vector, and why it vanishes if we slew a few degrees off. A dynamics mathematician called it an orbit in the space of sight. It sounds abstract, but the effect is concrete. It stays where gazes converge. Chance? Anything can be chance once. 3 nights, with adjustments that seem to anticipate our windows, begin to write a different kind of story. The point where many prefer to stay silent is the question of purpose. We do not know if there is purpose. We do not know if there is a who. We know the behavior is selective and efficient. It extinguishes without coloring, absorbs without heating, appears when attention is maximal, avoids leaving thermal traces or emission lines. In my trade, this is called an operational signature, not a biography. It is a how, not a who. And sometimes the how says more than we think. The natural possibility always remains. A cold plasma lamella, stabilized by the comet's own field, drawn into an equilibrium corridor, can do strange things. A cluster of charged particles, if it finds resonance with the upper magnetosphere, could settle and act as a temporary filter. I do not rule it out. But then I must explain the flatness of the edges, the polarization twist, the synchronized radio valley, the angular delay of the third night, the exact repetition on the line. Every explanatory model we try solves one piece and breaks another. That is the signal we are on new ground. So what next? 3 things on 3 scales. On the immediate scale, more shadows. Push temporal sampling to the camera's limits and extract edge diffraction to sculpt a contour. On the medium scale, coordination. Bring in modest low-frequency radio telescopes to map the noise valleys during occultation. On the global scale, transparency. Publish the curves and clocks, open observation windows to the community, subject our own temptations to the scrutiny of those who owe us no loyalty. If this is real, and it is real, it must live beyond our screens. I confess something I perhaps should not say aloud. There are nights when, staring at these staircases of light, I feel the universe is rehearsing a new form of grammar with us. Not in words, not in prideful flares, but in precise absences, in clean cuts across what we see. A grammar of silences. Perhaps I am wrong. Perhaps in a few weeks, we will explain the flatness with elegant plasma physics and laugh at having flirted with the impossible. But today here, between a visitor that has already taught us to mistrust the obvious and a third actor that neither signs nor heats, the trade left to us is to look better. If you have reached this point, you know what I will ask without fanfare. Support this work if it is useful to you, leave your city and your sky, share this report with those who know how to add eyes and clocks. This story belongs neither to an agency nor a laboratory. It belongs to anyone who understands that a clean edge in distant light can change how we think of ourselves. This time, I do not ask what is it, I ask how do we go on. And the answer, for the first time in a long while, depends not only on great mirrors. It depends on a community that has proven it can do frontier science with rigor and wonder at once. Between the Comet 3I Atlas and us, today, there is an inhabited interval. Perhaps by a physics we have not yet named. Perhaps by a tool. Perhaps by something that, like us, has learned to stand exactly where all gazes cross. Whatever it is, it has already achieved what few do. It has forced us to synchronize our clocks, sharpen our instruments, stop speaking in the abstract, and start measuring with humility. And that, though it may not seem so, is already a kind of answer.